For some people, every day is Halloween. This couldn't be any truer for Daniel Evans and Christy Terrence. They loved the idea of being scared and scaring others. This would include jump scares and sneaking up on random strangers from behind. Daniel and Christy definitely had the town irked at them. After high school, both of them stayed up every night into the late hours, watching horror movies instead of pursuing college. Their scare tactics had no limits. They even found it quite comical to frighten children. Christy even convinced one child to run away from home, claiming that his parents turned into monsters late at night, and one day the parents would eat him, starting with his eyes. What Daniel did was even worse. One night he was at his friend Rachel's house and told her he was tired and was going to head home for the night. After he left the house, he would sneak his way into the backyard. Daniel would then dress up and disguise himself, even putting on a mask and gloves. From there, he then broke into Rachel's house and made it look as if he was a criminal attempting to kidnap her. He would tie her hands and feet, and then blindfold her so she couldn't identify the car he dragged her to. He tossed her into the trunk, slammed it shut, and then drove off. Daniel even went as far as driving the vehicle into the lake, letting Rachel believe she was going to drown. With all of these acts, it wasn't surprising that Daniel and Christy had no other friends. Neighbors would even tell them that bad acts always come back to haunt you, and how everything was going to come back full circle. Daniel and Christy brushed off the thought, only caring about their own fun. A few days later, Daniel told Christy how he wanted to go to the theme park and wait for it to close.
We can hide out somewhere until the park closes, and then we'll be locked in all night. We can probably even get some free stuff out of it.
This piqued Christy's interest, and she quickly agreed. So the next day when it got dark and the park was about to close, Daniel and Christy hid behind a few stage props that were behind an indoor roller coaster. When everyone else had left, they came out of hiding.
Hey Christy, the workers must have left this roller coaster on. It's still running. The staff must have forgotten to shut it off.
They both took a seat inside one of the coaster cars, and to their surprise, the ride started up on its own. The car took them into the next room. Vampire bats hung from the ceiling. Spiders were crawling on the walls. From there, the coaster guided them through a cave where they were met with creatures like ogres, goblins, trolls, and a witch stirring a cauldron. "The monsters on this ride look so fake," said Christy.
Well, to be fair, this ride is for kids,
Daniel pointed out.
"I don't care. If you're gonna try to be scary, you need to go all out. What's wrong with being afraid? It builds character."
Daniel was about to answer back when something hunched in a corner caught his eye and made his skin crawl, and he grew silent.
That werewolf sure looks real enough,
Daniel finally spoke. Christy glanced over and almost leapt out of her seat.
"Finally! Something halfway realistic looking."
The eyes on the werewolf moved, and when its mouth opened, he let out a deep growl. He walked a few steps forward.
"Did that werewolf just move?"
Christy shouted. Just then, the beast climbed on top of the roller coaster.
"What kind of animatronics is this?"
Daniel shrieked, while struggling to get out of the cart just as the werewolf lashed out. Blood-curdling screams could not drown out the creature's deathly growls. This lichen showed no mercy, slashing and clawing and trying to rip them to pieces. The coaster quickly became red. The wolf left a gash deep enough on Daniel's right arm for his bone to be seen. At the risk of being mauled to death, Daniel frantically begged for Christy's help.
"Do something! I'm being torn apart!"
But by now, Christy was running away. She didn't think for a second to look back. Unfortunately, this caught the attention of the werewolf and it gave chase. As Christy ran out of the indoor roller coaster, she spotted a hall of mirrors nearby and quickly ran inside. She thought she could distract the wolf and hoped when the beast saw its own reflection, he would attack it instead of her. How wrong Christy was. For werewolves are intelligent creatures and are self-aware. The lichen did not even pay attention to his own image. Instead, this creature walked deeper in and Christie thought her heart would burst, petrified in fear. The Lycan did not have to try hard to find her, even in the hall of many false images. The beast tracked her by scent and hurled towards her. Before Christie even had time to scream, she was tackled through a number of mirrors, and in no time she was on the ground and bleeding badly. The ruby texture seeped through the cuts, trickling down over her skin as the werewolf stood under her. It clawed fiercely at her back, leaving deep lacerations as Christie prayed for unconsciousness. Moments away from biting into the flesh, a gunshot was fired. A bullet pierced the beast right through the arm, and a howling cry, loud enough to tear into the sky, was heard. The gunfire came from a police officer. The officer kept firing until the clip was empty. The beast was still standing, and just as it was about to unleash its devastation, Christie quickly picked up a broken shard of a mirror and jammed it through the Lycan's side. A gut-wrenching sound came from its lips as it fell over, appearing to be dead. While reloading the gun, the officer pulled Christie out from under the Lycan and yelled,
"The hell out of here!"
Little did they know the Lycan was not dead. When it awakened, it leapt up into the air, its jaws wide open. The Lycan pressed its fangs over the officer's neck as he cried for help. Christie was too frightened to assist once she saw blood escape the beast's mouth. The officer tried to pry open the jaws of the creature while Christie made a dash to safety. The Lycan's incisors and fangs completely closed, and the officer's fingers, as well as his head, snapped off. As the officer's now lifeless body laid over the ground, Christie raced out of the theme park, knocking on every home she could, yelling for someone, anyone, to open the door and let her inside. An older man heard her pleas for help and opened his door.
"The blazes is going on? You're making enough noise to wake the dead."
Christie didn't utter a word. Instead, she ran inside the man's home. There she saw an elderly woman who looked to be even more annoyed than her male counterpart.
"What's the commotion about? Christopher, why did you just let a wandering stranger into your house?"
The man retorted,
"I didn't just let her in, Myra. She decided upon herself to claim this home."
Finally, Christie shouted,
"Just shut the door, a werewolf is trying to kill me."
Tears filled her eyes.
"Think me a fool, girl? You're talking about the genuine article just roaming about the streets in the middle of the night?"
Christopher bellowed, wanting Christie to leave the house at once. But Christie turned around and shut the door, making sure to bolt and lock it. Christopher was about to give her an earful when suddenly he heard a loud sound by the door, followed by large claws slicing at it down the middle.
"That ain't no prop, Christopher. That be the real McCoy. Don't just stand there. Follow me."
Myra shouted. She ran to the basement, while the others followed close on her heels. Christopher began to barricade the door by using wooden nails. Christie was in a panic.
"Now we're trapped. Should have just tried to make a run for it outside."
The older woman shook her head and rushed down the stairs.
"Keep your wits about you, lass. You go running around, and the wolf would have killed you off even faster. How do you think it tracked you down so fast? It knows your scent. Whatever you did, you upset it by something fierce. It's royally vexed. When they're that crazy, they're worse than the living dead. That beast gets through the door, it will want to use its claws like a surgeon's scalpel and skin us alive. Or at least you. Me and Christopher might have it easy."
While Myra was roaming about, she retrieved some of Christopher's guns. They could hear the werewolf outside the basement door, its claws on the doorknob. Myra raced about the basement looking for ammo.
"There's plenty all around you,"
Christie shouted.
"Do you know nothing about werewolves, lass? These bullets need to be silver ones. Doing anything else is futile, child. You use anything else, it recovers too fast. Silver slows down the healing and gives it time to die."
Christie was a bit skeptical but didn't have time to talk back. She walked over and checked all the boxes of ammo with Myra. There were so many stacks it made Christie wonder if they were planning for World War III. The wolf ran into the basement door, and it nearly broke it in half. Christopher quickly came down the stairs and picked up a musket. One of the boxes Christy opened had 3 silver bullets, and she handed them to Christopher. Just as he began loading the weapon, the werewolf broke down all the boards Christopher set in place. The barricade was gone in just a few seconds. The tension and anticipation of death rose. Christopher quickly loaded his musket with one of the silver bullets and fired. The bullet penetrated the creature's chest and it fell to its knees. While the lichen was wounded, Christopher loaded the weapon a second time and fired straight through the wolf's left eye, lodging the bullet into the beast's skull. The creature covered its eye with his hand, and a sound came out that mortified Christy worse than if she had heard 100 sirens scream in unison. She thought for a moment that she had grown deaf.
How can this monster still be alive? Just what kind of sorcery is this?
Myra grabbed Christy by the collar of her shirt and responded,
It's not base sorcery. You don't know your legends, girl. Werewolves are man-made.
Christy shuddered, tears flooding her eyes once more.
That's right, whoever created this creature wants you dead. Just what in the heavens have you done to make someone want to do such a thing?
Christy looked over, wondering why Christopher had not fired the final shot. The elderly man was etching a cross in the last silver bullet. Perhaps it was in hopes to do more damage. Just as Christopher put the bullet into the weapon, the lichen smacked the musket out of his hands. The gun fell by Christy's feet. In one bite, the lichen took Christopher's hand clean off. He yelled in pain while watching his own hand being eaten. Myra tried to reach for the gun, but her right leg got slashed with the wolf, half of the flesh being torn from it. Christy picked up the musket and tried to take aim, but the beast was too quick, and Christy was afraid if she had fired and missed, she would lose her one chance of killing the creature. It ravaged and clawed away into Christopher and Myra, both of them shouting for Christy to run. Christy wasted no time running up the stairs and out the back door. In the backyard was a cornfield, and Christy used this opportunity to get lost in it. As she made her way into the field, she heard the lichen breaking apart the house and coming after her. Christy traveled further into the large patch of corn, hearing the sounds of the stock being shredded not too far away. She made her way out, and on the other side she bumped into a startled homeless man.
"What's your problem?"
He yelled in frustration. Christy ignored his protest and quickly asked, "Do you know how to use a weapon?"
"I fight a few in my day. Why?"
he demanded. Christy tossed the musket over to him. No sooner had he caught it, a big dark creature emerged out of the field. His hair standing on end, its teeth dripping scarlet, and its snarl vicious enough to frighten demons. The glow of the moon seemed to imply impending doom was going to be decided for everyone. A final cry reverberated from the werewolf as it bent over its hind legs, crouched down, preparing to feast. It launched at Christy, but the homeless man fired the gun, hitting the wolf square in the chest. The bullet penetrated right through the beast's heart, and he fell to the ground, its eyes falling a final time to never open again. Christy felt a slight glimmer of hope return to her, but the homeless man seemed uneasy.
"I'll come across a werewolf or two. If we want to make sure he never recovers, we will have to separate the body."
Both of them paused and wondered how they were going to do this, since neither of them had brought a knife. In the distance, however, they could hear a train approaching. Both Christy and the homeless man at that moment got the same idea and dragged the lichen to the train tracks nearby. The homeless man got his foot stuck in the tracks while dragging the beast over and looked to Christy for help.
"Hurry, help me out, my foot is stuck."
Christy attempted to help for a little bit, but saw the train was coming closer. At this point, she just gave up and started to walk away.
"What are you doing? Get back here and help me!"
the man shouted. Christy didn't let it get to her and calmly replied,
Thanks for your help, but what's the point of both of us dying? Better you than me, right? You're about what, 80? You're gonna die soon anyway. I still have my entire life to live.
She said it as if she had no care in the world. Her problem, after all, had been solved. The man saw the train approach and let out a scream,
but Christy didn't even turn around. She continued to walk away, even when she heard the man's body collide with the train, and all she could think of was where the nearest medical center was. With all the blood Christy had lost, she was surprised she could still walk. Christy thought about going to the hospital, but by the time she arrived home, her wounds had healed completely. Too lazy to change out of her clothes, she went to bed. She thought about telling her story to her parents in the morning, but knew that no one would believe her. She woke up the next day to a loud ringtone. It was much louder than she remembered, almost hurting her ears. It was her cell, so she flipped it open to see who was calling. To her surprise, it was Daniel. But how? She wondered. It can't be him. She knew for sure he had to be dead. Just in case, she answered it. You won't believe the horrible nightmare I had. There was this werewolf, and you were there, and it was tearing me to pieces. It felt so real, Christy shouted. It wasn't a dream. I was there with you. There was a long pause after that, but finally Daniel said, So let me get this straight. You left me to die and get mauled to death by the werewolf? Christy was a pretty good actor, so when Daniel spoke those words, she immediately responded, Oh, of course not. I was luring him away from you. That's the thanks I get for saving your life? I killed that werewolf for you, shot that beast right between the eyes. After turning things around on Daniel, he was the one that now felt guilty. Okay, I'm sorry. What do we do now? They decided it would be best to meet at the mall to discuss what happened. In the mall was a store that had gothic, vampire, and even witch merchandise. This included anything from potions and cauldrons to blood, fangs, skulls, and dark clothes. The owner of the store stood aside and listened to them as they recalled the events of the previous night. I thought for sure I was going to die. That creature nearly tore me in half. While they spoke, the owner walked closer to Christy and Daniel, making sure he was hearing correctly, and asked, What creature? Christy turned around and shrugged. Don't worry about it, old man. It was fake. As fake as those vampire teeth you have hanging on the shelves, along with everything else you have in the store. The man smiled at Christy's words and spoke as he walked away. This is only merchandise and nothing more. The real stuff I have at home I don't dare bring in. It would haunt your nightmares, and the screams in the back of your mind would never cease. At this point, Daniel grabbed the store owner by the collar, pushing him back against a shelf, causing some merchandise to topple over. Is that a threat, old man? He looked over Daniel's shoulder and said, You have the mark of a wolfkin. When Daniel heard this, he backed away, a little freaked out from the store owner's talk. What in the world are you talking about, old man? The owner released himself from Daniel's grip and walked over to the shelf and picked up a book, placing it on the counter. First of all, my name is Emilius, not old man. Second, I'm talking about lycanthrope, otherwise known as Children of the Moon. Again, Daniel looked confused and looked at Christy for help in understanding what he had just heard. She had no clue what Emilius was talking about either. Finally, he looked up from the book and sighed. As many horror movies as you like to watch, neither of you seem to know your material. I'm talking about a werewolf. That sparked their attention. Both Christy and Daniel stared at the owner with great concern and confusion. Just who told you we were into horror movies? Daniel said. The owner tried to find the right page, and while glancing through, he answered, This town doesn't like you very much. Neither of you. They say a great many things. It's clear what they did. They made a werewolf, just to hunt you both down and kill you. Both of you are infected, and in due time you will be werewolves yourselves. I would give it less than a few days before the disease takes full effect. As he spoke, he turned the book around so both Daniel and Christy could see a picture that explained just what the old man was trying to get across. On your arm, the same markings of this werewolf. Daniel responded. Well, being a werewolf doesn't sound so bad. It doesn't... Actually sounds kind of cool. The owner made sure to point out, the transformation is rather brutal. Your werewolf's claws are much bigger than human fingers, so it's likely your fingers will be torn off and replaced. Werewolves are normally taller, so your legs would break and reform again. Your jaws would dislocate and your teeth would shatter. This will happen to you every day for the rest of your lives. Suddenly, neither Daniel nor Christy were enthusiastic about the idea. Both were shaking from the thought and had asked the owner if there was anything that could be done to prevent this.
The town likely was hoping the lichen would kill you. It may have failed, but the next best thing happened for them. You now will live in torture. But there might be something I can do. If the town has a serum for the infection, it is likely they'll want you to prove yourself to get it. If you both value your lives, meet me outside the mall after tonight. I will try to talk something over with the townspeople and see if anything can be arranged.
Daniel and Christy left the store and walked around town the rest of the day. They were too nervous and too afraid to do anything else, and when midnight approached, they returned as Emilius requested. But he was not alone. A crowd of people so large that it almost encircled around the mall were waiting as well. Daniel and Christy slowly walked over to Emilius and asked him what was going on.
You're not going to like what you're about to hear, but it may be your best bet in staying alive.
Things didn't look any better for Christy or Daniel as they noticed the crowd had guns, torches, stakes, and even knives, which they were not even going to try to hide.
They told me since you like urban legends so much, it's only fair that you partake in one. Or should I say, many of them. I have a gate. Once it is unlocked, you walk through. You will be sent through a series of some of the most frightening tales ever told. Your task is simple, in theory. All you have to do is make sure no one dies. That means in any of the myths, you can't have one fatality, and you know how often someone dies in most urban legends. You have to read a great number of them after all. So to save your own lives, you'll have to save everyone else's.
Christy and Daniel had no idea what to think, having something asked of them so eerie and bizarre. They saw the gate Emilius was talking about. Its bars were a bright red as if they had been burning, and steam consumed it once the gate was opened. Shaking nervously, Daniel looked away.
What if we fail?
Emilius had never looked so serious, and never would again. In an unnerving tone, he said,
If you fail, everyone else will await your return. And when you turn into werewolves, it will be legal to hunt you down and kill you. So if you fail, you better run and run fast. The town plans to skin your hides.